Welcome to this walkthrough of the current FRQ, the rhetorical analysis. So I'm going to go into a good amount of detail here to help us determine where we want to head with our FRQ. So like I said, this is just for the rhetorical analysis, but some of these tips or some of these concerns will apply to any FRQ that you would write. So this is actually a released FRQ from a previous prompt. This is not the one that you just did. All right, and you can see in the corner that this got an 8. The College Board used to score all essays out of 9 points. So we know that this essay did very, very well. The equivalent of this now would be a 5 or a 6 out of 6. Okay, so it's a very good score. So we're going to walk through it. And I'm going to point out some of the things that I've marked here and take the advice based on the areas that you're struggling with in your FRQ. All right, so I've highlighted first the thesis statement. This whole first section that's in brown and orange is the introduction, and it says, "The speech given by Claire Booth Luce to the Women's National Press Club was controversial and even condemning of her audience. However, Luce pulls it off by gently preparing the audience for the criticism. She employs the fact that they invited her there to speak, a strong consideration for their feelings, praises of their professions, and a clear plea for open-mindedness." So as you can see, give me a second here. As you can see here, I have determined that what's in blue, what's in green, and what's in red, and also what's in this dark green down here, she's laid out the points that she's going to make. I know she's going to focus on employing the fact that they invited her there. I know that she's going to focus on a strong consideration for their feelings. I know she's going to focus on praises of their profession. And I know she's going to talk about a clear plea for open-mindedness. All right? She will discuss strategies, I'm assuming, within these things as she gets to them in her body paragraphs. So now we move on to our first body paragraph. And if you can get the first body paragraph right, you can generally just kind of repeat the same process. So the first part, the dark blue, this is actually the claim that she's making, how she introduces her claim. And then what's in the kind of turquoise color here, this is evidence and analysis, right? So if I look at this a little more closely, it says she opens the speech with a paradox about being happy and challenged. First saying she is flattered and honored, then she flips on her original statement, saying that she is less happy than you may think, lines 3 through 4. So she starts by saying she opens. I know that she's working chronologically through the text. She started with the first section of the speech, and I'm going to assume she's going to continue through the essay, telling me what the author is doing and why they're doing it from one section to the next. She's not jumping all over. She mentioned a rhetorical strategy already, paradox, and she used a piece of evidence. Let's continue. Right off the bat, Luce gives her audience signs that her speech is not going to be 100% positive. But then she makes sure to remind them that they have asked her for her opinion on what is wrong with the American press. Within her first paragraph, Luce makes her intentions clear before even stating her argument, and she confirms that they're aware that they asked for this criticism. So here's an interesting point. If you don't know a strategy, like for example, she mentions here that it's not going to be 100% positive. As the reader, I know that she's talking about connotation, which I've written down at the bottom of the screen. But she doesn't come out and say that. If you don't know the name of a strategy, the next best thing to do is describe it in as much detail as possible. Because the reader of your essay is going to be a college professor or an English teacher, and they're going to be able to follow your train of thought. You always want to use the names of the strategies, but if you can't, this is something that you can you can do instead. We don't want to just completely disregard the strategy. Then we can see she goes into detail here about what Luce is doing. And we can also see that her commentary, which is in turquoise, is significantly longer than the claim she makes, right? So we can see right there the length of a body paragraph. Now, if you want to be successful with body paragraphs, what you really need to do is answer these 3 questions. What does she do? So what is it that what is it that the author is doing? How does she do it? This is where we get into strategy and evidence. Why is it significant? Connecting it back, making sure to connect it to the thesis. So if my thesis was here, I need to make sure it's still clear what my thesis is, even when I have this first body paragraph, right? So that is the first page. I'm not going to go in detail over every single paragraph. So this is the second paragraph, and I want you to see how I've highlighted it. She mentions self-deprecation, but doesn't come right out and say tone, but I can pick up on that as the reader. She starts with the claim in the dark purple, then goes into her evidence and commentary in the light purple. Then she repeats it again as Luce continues her speech and does the same thing. What else I want you to notice is the first paragraph, body paragraph, said she opens. But the second body paragraph says in the second paragraph. So I can tell that she's moving chronologically from one section to the next. And this also serves as a transition. And this paragraph started as Luce continues. So it's clear she's moving from one section to another, right? And she's balancing a lot of different literary strategies or rhetorical strategies, okay? And then she, in her last paragraph, she talks about through the final sections. So I know we're approaching the end. She had 4 body paragraphs. Do you need to have 4 different sections? Not necessarily, but you want to err on the side of writing more rather than writing less. And then in her conclusion, this is what I would call a throwaway conclusion. It is acceptable. It's not optimal, but it is acceptable. She says, Luce is creative, careful, and aware when presenting her opening statements. She prepares the audience well by appealing to their feelings, being considerate, and through a plea for open-mindedness. Now, she basically, the person that wrote this, just repeated their thesis statement. It's not really a conclusion. But in a time crunch, if you can incorporate a conclusion like this, if you can at least get your thesis out again, that is going to be a good way to end your essay and remind the reader of what your thesis was to begin with. All right, so that's the walkthrough of this. If you have any questions about any specific parts, any specific things that you know you need to do in the FRQ, but you're not sure how to do it, just reach out to me privately and we can have a convo. Thanks.